So yeah, for those of you that are still here, thanks for sticking around. This is probably going to be one of the better, joking, panels that you evening. The topic of the panel today is, the path from engineering to entrepreneurship. A disclaimer: the panelist is more than just engineers who have transitioned from engineering to entrepreneurship. We did that intentionally to keep things interesting. We want to have a perspective of people who are still within the industry, with Ricardo at Google, and people who come from a STEM background, Shambrika, people who came from a non-technical background, potentially, and transitioned to engineering, and then they have started a company. So there's going to be a lot of different perspectives, but I think it's going to be important. I think the one key difference that I want to talk to about this panel is, throughout the panel, I encourage you all to kick back, relax, but if there's something that piques your interest, raise your hand, we'll bring a mic to you, we can have a discussion, like an interactive discussion. So many of the people, there's some people in here, I know Marcus over here has got a company that's got over 1 million active users in his mobile application, right? So there are a lot of people who come to this panel who have real life experience. People say that we don't build scalable companies, and this is a panel that not only shows you that we do, but we're going to talk about how we do it and how we've done it in real life. So that's the objective here. So to kick things off, let's get started. So I'd like to know how many founders in the room today, current founders. There you go. Yeah, this is what's up. And then how many founders are in the room? How many people are still working for the man, but have a side hustle? Okay, I like that. That's awesome. Okay, we're going to talk to you specifically in part of this discussion, because this is part of why we're having this discussion. I worked at Booz Allen Hamilton, Lockheed Martin, and Walmart prior to finally making the decision to jump ship and start my own company. And I don't know, I'm going to be the first person to tell you that there are people that were more intelligent, better looking, more articulate, better prepared to start their first company than me, that worked beside me throughout that 7.5-year period that I started my first company. And I still scratch my head and wonder, why the hell haven't they? Just let that soak in. And so we're talking to those of you specifically who are have that passion to start your company today, who are kind of sitting on the bench, because right now you're sitting, you may not have noticed this, but you're sitting in the center of entrepreneurship in Austin, Texas. So that'd be the capital factory. So without further ado, I'd like to just take a moment to recognize everyone on the panel today. We've got Ricardo Payan, right over there with Google. We've got Shambrika Wise. She's starting a company. She's also a part of the DivInc cohort. I'm going to give them all an opportunity to introduce themselves momentarily. We've got Brian Fontenot, and we've got Marcus as well. Marcus is the guy that's got all the followers on his app.
It's actually 1.4.
1.4 million followers. We're going to have fun with him today. And hopefully you pull him aside and get all the tricks of the trade after this is over with. And we've got Sam Olu as well, candidly. So we're going to start with Ricardo. Go ahead and give us a story give us a general overview of your background, and then we can kind of go from there, just sequentially.
Thank you, Sterling. Hello? Is this on? Is this on? Yeah. Hello?
There you go.
There you go. Hello? Yeah. Well, thanks, Sterling. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm going to do this kind of brief. And I actually want to pronounce my name very in Spanish, because I haven't done this since I've been in the States. It's Ricardo Payan. And every time I introduce myself, I have to do it like you, like Ricardo Payan, which is so different. So I'll start by that. Yeah, I'm with Google, so I'm an infiltrate on this panel, but very happy to do. I've been with Google for 5.5 years. I've been blessed to be in corporate world since ever I was out of computer science. I have a computer science degree from Columbia. And I've been in different companies like Red Hat, Oracle, all the IT space, and with Google for 5.5 years already. I've worked in the Google Cloud side. I'm an account manager right now, but I've been always like sales consultant, so I can expand a little bit more later.
Awesome, thanks.
Hi, as Darling said, my name is Shambrika Wise, and I do have a STEM background. I received my bachelor's in biology with organic chemistry as my thesis research. I am starting my own company. I am still working for the man. I actually told the man I was signing off for a minute. So I'm actually starting a company with the intention of attracting diverse talent from the STEM pool of actually going into college professions to actually becoming a career profession. So as we discussed earlier, there needs to be a more intentional act of attracting talent. So you say you want to do D&I and you want to have more diverse candidates, but what are you doing? So that is what my company is focusing on. So I look forward to being able to talk to you guys and answer any questions that you may have today.
Can you hear me? Perfect. Hi everyone, my name is Brian Fontenot. I'm excited to be here. I'm the founder of the Elevation Firm. We're a professional services firm helping companies to be empowered through storytelling, brand design, and technology transformation. I do not have a STEM background. I was a 2012 graduate at University of Texas, where I started out electrical engineering, but ended up switching into economics, but minored in computer science. Texas boy, born and raised, so I'm originally from Houston, Texas, but I've been called Austin home for the last 10 years. And it's been an amazing journey through helping understand technology, but finding ways to find entrepreneurship and find success in entrepreneurship and merge my two passions together. So I'm excited to share with you what I've learned.
My name is Marcus Gunter. You hear me right? I guess I fit into the panels from engineer to entrepreneur. I went to Central Michigan University, major in information technology, minor in entrepreneurship, or as my mom said, the first person she met that uses both their major and their minor in her career. Did the whole corporate route, worked for a Fortune 500 company, hated every minute of it. So I just started doing small businesses on the side, and just kind of like went from there. Learned a lot, and then finally broke free from the chains of corporate America to do what I love. And that's what you need to do what you love. It doesn't feel like work anymore. And I'm from Detroit.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Sam Gulu. I'm the founder of a company called Candidly, like candid photos. So my background is in aerospace engineering. I actually went to Florida Tech undergrad. Went to grad school at the University of Cincinnati, specialized in data design, worked at GE, and then decided to start a photography company. Well, Candidly is exciting because we are actually reinventing how you think about photography. Between the moments when you take a selfie or when you have a professional for a wedding, there's like this huge gap in between kids' birthdays. An event like this, unfortunately, we're not shooting this event, but there's like so many live events that are not being captured, and we've built a business that allows you to connect with photographers for like $40 for your live events while you actually enjoy it. So, yeah, excited to be here.
No, thanks. This is a great overview. I think, while I ask the next series of questions, I want each of you to think about especially those of you who are considering or still working for the man and considering entrepreneurship. I want each of you to think of, what are some of those challenges? What's holding you back? What are those things that are unknown? And I want you to take a moment. We're going to take a moment to actually have a discussion about that, interactive discussion about that here today. But just to get started, like I know that whenever I thought about starting my first company, when I was working at Booz Allen, it was one of the situations whenever I told my bosses that I wanted to move to Texas from DC to start my first company, one of them said, "You must be crazy. You can see the next 15 years, like you're on the fast track to success. Like you can write your own ticket. You got an amazing kind of resume, and you are very technical. Why the heck would you give this up to start your own company?" And I don't know if it was just a moment of clarity for me, or if it was a moment of insanity for me. But what I do know is that I saw it clear. There was a point when I woke up and I said, "Hey, I can see the next 15 years, and I feel like God's got more for me, effectively." So, but with that came all sorts of challenges. Those of you that know me know that it hasn't been a golden paved road. I've been learning across since the very beginning. Right, Preston? You know that. It's been a learning process. Success still, is a work in progress, right? So, what I want to ask each of you is, what are some of those challenges that you've experienced early on in your entrepreneurship journey? For those of you that actually started, for those of you that aren't entrepreneurs, talk through kind of some of the challenges that you've had along the way, and let's have a discussion about why you haven't actually completely jumped ship yet, too. But no, seriously, let's talk through. Someone jump in. Like, what are some challenges that you had early on when you jumped into the unknown to start your first company?
I'll go first. Thank God for Preston, Dana, and Ashley, because I don't have a business background, and so I already came into the scene with the imposter syndrome. Like, I don't belong here. I'm a woman. I'm a minority. Like, I don't have a place here. But it's programs like that are like, yeah, you do, and this is why. And I was actually in my way more so than what other people were. And so it's just honestly getting out of my way and allowing myself to be able to absorb what's being taught to me, the people I have around me, and the resources that are available. I didn't know about them, but that's where your help comes. So you have to also be in a situation to know how to receive, and that's another thing with me too. Like, entrepreneurs are typically people that figure things out. And single mom here, I'm figuring things out every single day.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't really know how to train yourself to rethink until it's like either you retrain yourself to think a different way, or you stay in the same place where you were the day before. So that's been the biggest thing for me, but I really appreciate the transition I've made personally and professionally. So that's been great.
Awesome. Brian, what are some challenges you had early on?
Definitely. So one of the things when you think about entrepreneurship is really how you break it down. Entrepreneurship is defined as figuring out there's a problem, and it's saying, okay, there's this one problem that I'm going to work on, and here's a solution for it. Then once you find a solution, it's like, what is the process of replicating that solution on whatever scale that you're looking for? And it can be sometimes hard to just know where to start, because you can do 1,000 things. But it's really what zoning in and what people talk about is the zone of genius. What is that one thing that you do so well that people come up to you because you are the expert of it? There is nobody that's going to do it better than you. And sometimes it takes a lot of introspection with yourself to figure out, what is that one thing that I'm good at? A lot of times we don't know. And we started in one place, but we end up getting to a different destination. So what for me started with building my company to be a design agency and figuring out that, yeah, I care about advertising and marketing. But then as time went on, there was a bigger growing piece of technology adoption. You could build somebody an amazing website, but what happens when they get a flood of requests coming in? They don't have technology process to help them to be very lean so that they can respond back to those things. And over time, I began to figure out that's how I can play in my expertise in consulting and technology into helping the same companies that are doing advertising, but giving them a whole life cycle of getting through the steps of external processes and internal processes. So the biggest thing really was more or less figuring out what is that zone of genius that I can really focus on, building that solution, and then being able to replicate the solution and scale it to bigger.
That's good.
Maybe I'll jump in. So we're talking about challenges, right?
Yeah, challenges.
So I think mine's a little bit counterintuitive. I think I strongly believe that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to have immense conviction in what you're building and the ability to stick to that conviction and the vision of what you're trying to do. And what I mean by that is this. When I first started Candidly, I met with a lot of advisors, and when you think about booking a photographer in 2017, when everyone has cameras, it's kind of ridiculous, everyone thinks you're crazy. But I had conviction in the fact that it wasn't just about booking photographers, it was about what actually happened if you experienced your life moment and someone else captured it. And a lot of times for minority founders and female founders, when you take that leap to become an entrepreneur, you don't have that confidence, like the Caucasians or everybody else that are out there doing this, to go in front of the VC and say with confidence, this is what I'm trying to do. Here's why. I'm not saying And that's very challenging for me. It was because when I started pitching the company, and we got so many no's before we got our yes. So, for a second, I was asking myself, like, what am I talking about again? So long story short, you need to have conviction and the vision of the company that you're trying to build.
Thank you. Now, so Mark, as we mentioned, you have a ton of users that use your platform on a daily basis. That didn't happen overnight. Like, how did you kind of get to where you are? What are some challenges you encountered throughout that process?
Well, I was gonna go over the first challenge, was just how to leave corporate America, but I'm gonna skip to building my business.
No, I want to hear that. I want to hear that too.
Okay. I mean, we go to school, we learn a trade, for me, information technology, and the system teaches us to work for corporate America. And it's a programming that's hard to override. So to override that, you need to find a passion in something, and you have to accept failure. Once you kind of got those two out of the way, then it's just a waiting game of finding something that you find truly passion in doing. Something where you can work on in your free time and not really care about the money, but just being really good at it, and just, this is my thing. I don't care if no one uses it. This is my product, whatever. I'm proud of it. There is no regret. I don't care if no one uses it. I get it, versus I just gave myself an excuse. I just collected a paycheck, and now I'm 45 years old regretting it. That's far worse than failure. So once I got that into my mindset, I started building the product. I had two failed businesses before then. Actually, the first one was just a fallout with a business partner. Second one, the recession kind of took it down. And the third one was just me building a product called MyVidster, a video bookmarking service. There were several out there back then, 10 years ago. And I said, well, I don't have any money. I mean, I have just whatever I have in my pocket, but my competitors they're funded by WordPress, they're funded by True Ventures. How can I compete with this? I was like, well, I'll just focus on one feature and be really, really good at it. I'm good at solving problems with technology. The competitors, their bookmarking algorithms are okay. They did a lot of hard coding. It works for YouTube, works for TED Talks, whatever. I want to make it agnostic. Any site, that one feature. I want to be everybody in that one feature. I'm not going to worry about all the bells and whistles, all the other widgets and stuff that they put on there because they have, $500,000 in funding. They got to find something for the developers to do. So I kept working on it, and nobody would use it. I tried to pitch it to my friends. Mistake, right? Pitch it to other communities. Everybody says they'll use it, but they don't use it. I created an account, and 2 days later they're doing something else. MySpace back then, I guess. But just from 5 to 10 visitors a day, and I just kept working on it, and then all of a sudden it became 50 visitors a day, 300 visitors a day, and I just whoa, wow. And when you start building a great product, especially for it's like a B2C product, they'll tell their friends. If you have a crappy product, you better hire a marketing team. But think about how Google started, and a lot of these startups back 10 years ago, there wasn't really a marketing engine. They just built a great product, and you told your friends about the great product. I really hope that. Well, actually, it's even better now because we have social media. Before you had to talk to a person to say to use Google. I mean, I heard about Google because people in my office said, don't use Yahoo search, it's crap, use Google. Now it's just, you just tweet it or you post it, and now you all of a sudden, you got a user base. So I think now it's actually easier, but it's, once again, you want to, remove the excuse, just work on it, be really good at it, and, just, a product that you love. That's really about the thing. It took me years to, get up enough users to actually make enough money to pay my, bills. So it wasn't an overnight thing. Most entrepreneurs burn out after the 6 months. I think it took me about 2 years to get enough to traffic and revenue, and then after that it was just, kept going up.
So one of the things that I didn't hear anyone mention directly is, funding, and that's a very unique panel with any founder, specifically founders of color. No one really said, one of the hardest things was getting off the ground, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw it out there. Getting funding was early on. Finding that first investor was one of the hardest things that I had to do. But not every business needs to have an investor. I know that a few of the panelists here have bootstrapped businesses successfully. So I just want to talk to that for a moment. How did you get to your first customer? Did you bootstrap to where you are now? Tell me more about that.
So I'll take this one.
Yeah.
So when we started Candidly, the first thing we did was we went to Craigslist. So, well, the other way around. So we would in Cincinnati go to wine tastings where there's a lot of supermoms. And we would say, hey, at your kid's birthday, what if you present a photographer for $60? Like, you're already paying money for the clown, the cake, everything else. And we have an iPad, so we get their email address and a date. And about 3 days before the event, we send them an email and say, hey, do you still want a photographer? And they would say yes, and then we would charge them. And then we would go to Craigslist and find a photographer that would shoot for us. So that's kind of how we started. And then very quick, and then so like at those kids' birthdays, all their other moms would say, wait, how much did you pay for this, and how do you get a photographer? Long story short, the work kind of grew, but very quickly we realized that we needed funding to build the thing out and actually get the product out and do a bunch of other things. So we started with Startup Weekend. So we went to Startup Weekend, met some people in the ecosystem off of that, and then leveraged that to get in front of an angel group in Cincinnati, Queen City Angels. And then I'm not saying it was easy. It was very challenging, but coming from an engineering background, one of the things that you do empirically as an engineer is to de-risk whatever you're trying to build. And for us, the first thing that we just had to do was, can we even show that people are willing to pay for this thing? And that helped us with fundraising. Okay, great. How much fundraising have you raised today? A little bit over $2 million.
Excellent. Wow, excellent. Yeah, so how about you? I know, Marcus, your story is a little bit different, right?
I mean, what's that one saying? If you're a coder, you have superpowers. Someone said that on the internet, right? You can get very, very far with your business, especially if you're an engineer or a developer. You can get with the MVP out on your own. If you feel that the barrier is financial capital or whatever, yeah, go ahead and pitch it. But if you're a developer or engineer, start building it. You'll be surprised on how far you can get, and any weaknesses, you just try to minimize it and just focus on your strengths. I'm a good developer. I'm a terrible front-end person. If you go to my website, it's gotten better, but it reminds you of Reddit. I mean, like, I get 500,000 visitors a day. You realize really quickly, it's about the back end, the data. Even Facebook is not that aesthetically pleasing, so you can minimize, your weaknesses. And you can get very far with Bootstrap. I'm bootstrapped to this day, but I know for some people there's limitations that you may need to hire a developer or whatever. I wouldn't know, kind of thing. Well, nowadays I'm to the maturity point where I do outsource, stuff, but that's like 8 years of running my business on my own, pretty much. So you'll be surprised what you're capable of. Just go out there and just work on it. And if you're not a developer, maybe learn a little bit of coding, or maybe go to WeWork and hire some Ukraine developer for like $5 an hour. You can get pretty far. Like his creativity was Craigslist to launch his business. We're in an age of information. There's a lot of ways to minimize your weaknesses, and you just got to go out there.
Yeah, and I think as Black and brown founders, we have to think outside the box, and we have to be creative. I mean, the stats show that 1% of founders typically receive funding. They go out and actually pitch, and less than 1% of that 1% are Black and brown founders, right? So we have to think outside the box. In some cases, we have to, start a side hustle to fund our main hustle, as well as work full time while we pursue those dreams of ours. So, how about you, Ricardo? What are your thoughts on funding and being an ally to other to startups, et cetera, through Google?
Thanks, Charlie. So I'm going to answer that. I actually want to go one step behind the previous question. And the reason I want to do it is because I want to talk to the people that are in corporate America today.
Yeah.
And especially because, I've been going back and forth. I'm not in the pond right now, but I did have this tipping point at some point, sometime in my life, basically 30 years old. Like, I want to do something. I'm an entrepreneur. And the reason that I relate very well to your points about that comfortable feeling when you're like having your paycheck and having stocks and having all that kind of thing. But also on my sense is I have 2 children, and I had the first one very young. So my daughter, like, I had her when I was 18, right? So it was also a selfish kind of feeling. Like, if I do and go entrepreneurship, my risk aversion level is so low because I have to go after my daughter at that moment. So I kept postponing it, right? So, and I'm gonna link that to your question about now, because at some point I don't want to reach my next, like my 40-year kind of timeline to do it, right? So I'm on that point, like I'm gonna do it. I have had like this kind of side hustle that we have like a group of friends, and the pact that we did is like the first one that is out of corporate is going to go and fund and do this, like this, he's gonna be the CEO, we're gonna fund the rest of the people. So we went to this pitch to friends and we did it, and we failed spectacularly. Yeah, so we had a great app and we lost a lot of money, like, but yeah, I mean, we didn't know, and that was one of the things I didn't share is I came to the US last year, July 4th. And one of the reasons I did it is, yeah, give that opportunity to my children who live in a different culture, but I also want you to learn about this, right? Like this access to capital, access to smart people here is different. And yeah, I mean, definitely I would do things so differently now. I'm funding, like seeding capital a little bit, but I definitely need to go into I need to own some stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think it is definitely a challenge. Like having the Google brand, it is different. Like for me, I know that I quit my job and I go to not any investor, but I could pretend that I'm smart at least. And having like having the Google and CV help. Like ex-Googler can, but I know like from a brown community, Latino community, it is different. Like it is interesting. You mentioned the comment of having like low, kind of paid very low because you're in a developing market. I mean, being on the other side, like once I went out of college, I was fresh and I was being paid low versus other markets just because I was from Colombia and I was living in Colombia. So I mean, there's a gap there that it's really important to just keep kind of fighting at some point.
No, yeah, thank you. That's helpful. Shamrika, what was your tipping point when you to actually leave? I know that you have a background in the government sector, right? So, like, what was it for you that said, hey, was DivInc, was Preston's like compelling pitch to join the hottest pre-accelerator for Black and Brown founders in the United States of America? Sell you, or what was it?
You just don't know. I need to definitely buy Dana, Preston, and Ashley Flask and let them fill it up whatever they want to when I'm done. No, actually, I'm a very open book. So for me, my tipping point was when I found out I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. That made me step back and analyze everything and everybody in my life. And if you weren't a 7 or above, bye. And that's real. So it came down to really, really close friends that were like family, and my mission. My mission was to help students. I've always helped students. I'm a Bill and Melinda Gates Scholar. And so that mission that was embedded in me was you pay it back by bringing them forward. So I've mentored scholars for over 10 years, but I could only do it really a few at a time. I'm like, how can I do this more effectively? And so pretty much while I'm recovering from my first episode, I'm like going a million miles in my head, like what can I do? And my mom was like, you're crazy, why don't you just rest? And I'm like, I don't do that. Like, this is a situation, this is not long term. Like, I'm put here for a difference and I'm gonna make that difference happen. And so pretty much researching, I actually applied for Camelback Ventures. I'm not sure if you've heard of them in New Orleans. Made it all the way to the finalists, but they picked a lot of people that were social justice. And at the time, my brand that I was trying to build out was not social justice. So applauded everybody that made it because they were amazing people. But I was like, I'm not gonna stop. Like, I worked too hard to push all this through. Like, it was 130 something applicants and I made it to the last 30 something. So that was an accomplishment. But I'm like, this is for a reason. So working with one of my best friends, she told me about Preston's program. And I'm like, we need to apply. She's like, yeah. And so we've been friends for 17 years, and I actually ended up getting into the second cohort, but because of work-related things, I needed to, kind of put off my enrollment, essentially. So actually, me and my best friend ended up getting into the program. But honestly, it was just like time to self-reflect and realize that even though, I'm a great grade in the government, been there 7 years, got job security, I do my job well, I'm not doing my purpose. And so that's why I am here, and that's why I'm focused, and that's how I moved from thinking I needed a $120,000 app to making this work on a less than $10,000 website.
Oh, yeah. So I dare anyone of you to follow up on that one.
All right. I have a lot of Marxisms, and one of my Marxisms is Yeah, you can't kill what refuses to die. So after my first business, it was in a dance company, a little dance company, starter business, you know, with this very manipulative business partner. Long story short, I left because he was married with children and he was using the dance company not to spread the love of dance, but to cheat on his wife. So I left out of that, and I was doing it for about almost 2 years, and you know, you have like that empty void. I don't know if anybody has ever given up a business before, but you know, even though it was a part-time business, I was spending probably 20 plus hours a week in that studio, teaching, whatnot. And I'm from the Midwest. I was working in Indianapolis, a very family-oriented city. And I was, you know, it's really like everybody gets married in their like 20s or whatever. And I was like, well, you know, I gave the business a try. You know, I failed, kind of, and met this girl on MySpace. And that's how old I am. You know, for me, in my mind, sparks were going off. You know, we're on our, you know, date or whatever, and you know, went on a few dates, and then we, you know, we hook up. You know, that thing happens, and I was so happy, and then she disappeared. And I was like, wow, life just keeps shitting on me, you know? All right. So I was like, on the holidays, you know, you get a little 2 weeks off. Corporate America gives you that. And I was kind of like still empty. So I just opened up a text editor and I just started coding. And I started up 2 businesses that week. I started up the dance company that beat my competitor, and I built the company that I do today. So, you know, the tipping point was like, life sucks sometimes, but you know, you take that anger and you take that negative energy and you turn it into positive. And ironically, 2 years ago, on Facebook, this random person with no mutual friends sends me a friend request. And I'm looking at her picture, looking at it hard. And I was like, MySpace girl. What? And I clicked accept, and I was like, hi, are you MySpace girl? Pause, yes. And she apologized, and I'm looking at her profile, and you know, she's married with kids, you know, and it's like, wow, that could have been me. Actually, not wow, but thank God it's not me. You know, I'm just playboy entrepreneur now. Shoot, I like this, you know. I mean, I'm about to buy my second boat, you know. I mean, you're shuttling the kids to school in your minivan. She was apologized, but I was like, no, please don't. Everything happens for a reason, and that's another lesson I learned. Good and bad things happen for a reason. For me, I just saw all this as test to see how strong I am, and test to see if I can actually make it in the real world, at least to this level.
Okay, so go ahead. I know I gotta leave, so I'm just gonna go ahead and talk about my tipping point.
Yeah, go ahead.
And before I head out. So my mother was a teacher. My dad was a banker. So I was kind of raised in a household where I'm Nigerian. And I don't know if you noticed, but that's like a Nigerian joke about how you're raised to either give up for a lawyer or you know, one of those 2 things. And then anything else is like a joke for my parents. But the crazy thing about it is that we were raised with
Sorry.
But
sorry.
the amazing thing about it was that we were like implicitly raised with the ability to do whatever we wanted to. And while I was in grad school and I got recruited by GE Aviation, I was working at GE, which was pretty cool. Like I was working on a jet engine for a UAV. But then one day on my couch, I was watching CNN, and there was this interview between Soledad O'Brien and Mike Arrington. You guys know who Mike Arrington is? He was the guy that started TechCrunch. And so, yeah, so like, this is like back in 2010, I believe. Anyway, so they're doing this interview, and they're talking about tech. And at the end of the interview, she goes, hey, everyone knows Mark Zuckerberg, and everyone knows Jeff Bezos. You were covering the tech space, so can you just name for me one black technology entrepreneur? Just give me one. And he's like, oh man, you know, I don't know any black technology entrepreneur. And I was on my couch and I was like, wait, really? Like none of us is building something? And so I kind of like, I don't know, I got obsessed by that question, and I started researching, blacks in tech. And the reality is that there are blacks in tech. But unfortunately, none of us is building anything, you know, at least at that moment in time, none of us was building anything that was so monumental that it would change something that was fundamental to us, right? You know, if you think about Jeff Bezos, he was buying stuff online. You know, the Google guys, they were searching, you know, the internet. You know, Zuckerberg with Facebook, it was, you know, relating with other people, social networking. So, you know, I pretty much set on this very painful journey that I'm still on, and I decided I'm going to give it a shot. And that's one reason why I'm very passionate about Candidly, is that even though you don't know about this now, but hopefully when we want something in 2018 that will make a lot of noise in other markets that we're in. But the amazing thing about Candidly is that we all make memories. You know, in your life, there's some moments where you're like, I probably don't want to take a selfie. Or there are moments where you're like, the selfie's probably not good enough. A lot of times people either take a selfie or they end up doing nothing at all. So that moment goes uncaptured. So what we're doing with Candidly, so for me, I set out to build our company. So that's what we're really doing. So we're building a company that allows you to get back to living your life while someone or something else captures it. So for me, that was the tipping point, was just watching that whole thing. And it's been an amazing journey. I'm sorry that I have to head out early. There's something really exciting that we're getting ready for 2018 that I need to be at. But thanks again. I'll be here for the happy hour. So.
Of course you will.
Count me in. I'll be back here for the happy hours. But again, thanks for inviting me to this.
No, thanks, Andy. Really, I know you did a big one.
Ladies and gentlemen, we also have barbecue, by the way, too, so. But I just want you guys to start thinking of the questions.
Oh, yeah,
We'll come around to you. Sterling, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah.
If you guys have questions, we'll go ahead and get to them.
Okay, I see you did with the barbecue. So I told you earlier on, we got a few more points we're gonna make with our awesome panelists. But I told you guys earlier on at the very beginning of this discussion that we wanted to give some spotlight to those of you who are still in corporate America, may have one foot in, one foot out, or may just have a good idea and are kind of apprehensive about what it is you want to accomplish. So Brian, if I can borrow you really quick with the mic.
Yes, sir.
Who's brave enough to kind of share that with us and like talk about some of those challenges? I saw about 17-ish of you raise your hand, and those of you that are looking around at other people, I think that you know who you are. But would love to know kind of what that idea is. I see you in the blue shirt, I can't read your name, but would love to know. Let's talk about, you know, what is your idea and like, what are some of the challenges or what are some of the apprehensions you have?
So I don't want to share my idea, but
Because I'll steal it, that's why. I had that much free time.
But this to me is very inspirational. I've not had this inspiration since, you know, being in an entrepreneurship class in college, you know, a few years ago. And you know, I spoke to Amanda earlier for mentioning, you know, we need to start this entrepreneurship journey earlier for students. I definitely agree, because I didn't find my passion to come back to tech until I did that. And so I'm in corporate America with we're a WP engine. If you still want a corporate America side hustle, there's a meet and greet tomorrow, 5 to 7. I don't know why I'm plugging it, but
It's that good old brainwashing.
And then there's another one this weekend. So I'm a manager, I'm a hiring manager too. So come on, we are hiring. So anyway, gotta have money to grow, right? So, but no, this really engages me and makes me want to I was just telling Patrick, you know, these ideas, these things I've kind of put on the back burner, made excuses for. Kids come along, life happens. So much life has happened to me this year. I love your motivations, the things that have pushed you down. You know, my 19-year-old son passed away this year on suicide, and that is a moment to me that I need to plummet from, right? I'm not going to, you know, and so I raised my hand because we started a foundation for him. I'm a nonprofit founder. You know, our 501c is pending, C3 is pending, but it's coming, and we're going to do really big things. We've already started that. So I love the stories of the things that got you down, because I think that's exactly it. You need that, you know, something that's just going to, you know, reignite unite you, and I think this is going to be part of it too. So when I'm having my tipping point, it's going to be 2017, and when I was at the Capitol.
That's awesome.
Oh. Can I respond to that real quick? What was your name again? Jathan. Thanks so much for sharing. Huh?
Say Jathan.
Jathan. Thanks so much for sharing. And to kind of go back to your point, everybody has a kind of a tipping point. And what was it specifically for me is that entrepreneurship kind of was a way for me to find a way to also to give back. So just like you, I'm also a nonprofit founder. And I thought of entrepreneurship as my means to be able to, one, hire other black and brown talented students and workers that have, amazing talent, amazing ideas, creative thinking, and problem solving. But two, but also to find it as a vehicle to be able to give back. So through my company, portion of the proceeds and profits that we get from every client goes into a scholarship and mentorship fund to help prepare and mentor the next generation of students from the black and brown. But for me, entrepreneurship has always kind of been a bug. When I was in college, during my middle time in college, I started a video production photography company. And it started going off really, really successful. So much that my mother and father pulled me down together, which is funny because they were both divorced. So I'd never seen my mom and dad like next to each other and agree at the same thing at the same time and say, you need to quit your business and be a full-time student, because they were worried about me not completing school. And I was just so dumbfounded. I'm like, my dad's supposed to be on my side. Like how? But long story short, I ended up getting out of entrepreneurship, going to work in corporate America, but then it was like, I'm not feeling fulfilled. I see problems and solutions that we're not solving. I enjoy what I do, but I also want to do more. And entrepreneurship bud just kicks right in and says, hey, go solve this, or go work 20 hours a day when you're working maybe 10 hours a day so you can go do something that's fulfilling. And so, sorry to hear about the loss of your son, and definitely amazed by what you're doing with your nonprofit and being able to honor his legacy. I know it's going to be successful.
That's excellent. Thank you for that, Brian. Yeah, so I want to continue the discussion around what you just started. That's exactly what we're looking for. Like, what are some of those things? And I know Marcus Carey, who's a prolific founder here in Austin, has something that he wanted to add to the discussion. Brian, can you run with it really quick?
Anything Marcus has got to say? We need to hear.
So let's
Marcus is a quiet giant in this city. He's exceptionally talented, so I'm going to put you on the spot here, Marcus, because only I can.
Well, I'll follow that, even introduction, thanks. So my question is, every time I see a group of black entrepreneurs, most of the time, solo founders. And so what I see in Silicon Valley or Stanford or these other different backgrounds, I see people that have, 3, 4, 5 founders, they all specialize in something. And so sometimes we kind of emphasize code, but other skills like marketing and all these other things are very valid. Why do y'all believe that black founders usually are very like one most of the time when I see them? Very successful entrepreneurs, you just hear one person. But if you hear about like Twitter, you know Jack Dorsey, Ed Williams, Bidstone, 3 or 4 of them, and they've done 4 or 5 companies together. So what's your take on that?
I can hop on this one. They say that I'll never start a startup by yourself because it increases your chances for failure. And I do agree with that. It's very hard. Most of the successful tech companies, you have your Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak or whatever, you have your visionary, your business person, you have your technical person. And I think that's the best duel. Just for me, just never really found my Steve Jobs. I'm more of the Wozniak type of guy. I like to be in the code. I like to be in the infrastructure. I would recommend finding that duel. It's just environment. Just never Midwest. For me, I'm not gonna say it's a race thing. For me, it was just more of a location. In Indianapolis, it's a very conservative city. They don't have really a tech startup scene. So it wasn't like events I can go to where I can just find that visionary or whatnot. So for me, it was just more environmental. Maybe it would have been different if I was in San Francisco when I had my idea where everyone wants to get involved. But when I mentioned the word startup, they're like, what? You work at a pharmaceutical company, you make good money. Well, what are you doing? It's like, never mind, kind of thing. And when I left Indianapolis, they just started their startup community. This thing called Verge. I don't know if anybody's heard of Verge or whatever. I talked to Mike Huckelberg about it. I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm at. Is there anyone at my level? And he's like, no, you're ahead of us. I had to leave, kind of thing. But yeah, it's just, for me, environmental, but the dual thing, I think, would have accelerated me a lot faster. You know, I've been at it for 10 years. I'm just now, you know, just a couple years ago, I hit that million registered user mark. Maybe if I had a business person, I would have did it in 5. But hey, I got there anyways.
Right, I think that's a good question, Marcus. I think that the answer, I don't have the answer to the question. I think that there's a challenge, and I'll actually, Carl, you're coming up. But I think there a couple stats show that the majority of black-owned businesses are single, not only founder teams, but actually single person businesses.
Exactly.
And so like my solution in that, in not having a co-founder, I've had co-founders before, but currently is that, you know, it's about the team. I mean, the team, establishing a strong founding team in general, however you define that or articulate that is important. Like having people that are sold out, all about it, etc. I'm not the kind of founder that believes that you should bring on someone that may be detrimental to your company just to have a co-founder. Not saying that is the only answer, but I feel like you got to make sure that whoever's on board with you is sold out, or else it can spell tragedy. And so I'm kind of risk averse in that sense. I'm not risk averse in other senses. So that's my answer to your question. I know, Carl, you wanted to add something as well.
Hold on. We're going to take a detour. 2 reasons. One, we have 3 black men on stage, 2 black male hosts, a black MC, and other black men who've asked questions. I want to ask if there are women in the room that have a question that I can come and grab, because this is a diversity function. As much as I love my black men, it's time for us to spread this out. Thank you. Carl, I'm coming to see you, but I'm coming to see you, ladies first.
Hi, I'm Laura Hill. I'm an angel investor. I love your passion, and obviously that's huge that you love your idea and you're committed. I haven't heard any of you mention any research that you did on the market opportunity. So maybe some of you could speak to, when you started your businesses, what research you did to identify the size of the market opportunity that you were going after.
So I can start with this one, and I feel sorry for, again, this man right here. Like, I've whiteboarded his life away for like the past 6 weeks, honestly. When I started to look at the attrition rate of minorities in STEM, it was alarming. But, you know, it's gonna sound pretty harsh, but some university professionals that I spoke to, they're like, unless it's a private school, like, the public schools are still gonna get their money. So they're in the business of basically getting those students there. And some of them are now just focusing on trying to push them all the way through. Like University of Texas has done an amazing job with that as recent as this year. They were just actually highlighted in the New York Post. However, there are still some industries, like my professional STEM industries, who are now my clients, no longer universities, that are struggling. People think minorities don't make up a big population in those professions, but actually $16 billion a year is lost when we walk out the door. So when you start to investigate, why are they leaving? And for reasons that, you know, I can cite offline for sure, it really boils down to mentorship. So if you create this intentional pipeline of college to career, and you get them early enough where you are able to, like I said earlier, retrain the way they think, retrain the way that they perceive themselves in this space, you're gonna create a different culture. And you're gonna be able to create a culture where it's going to be more inviting, they're going to be more willing to stay, and they're going to be willing to give back and repeat that cycle instead of the cycle of saying, well, I worked hard for this degree, I'm not welcomed here, there's harassment here, there are other issues that are not fair to me that are here, I'm gonna leave and go do something else. Because STEM majors are very, very wanted because we're analytical. Sorry. But and we overthink everything. But we didn't go to school to do X, Y, and Z. We went to school to be chemists, to be biologists, to be, you know, professions in that industry. But for some reason or another, we're costing that industry $16 billion. So when you have examined reports like CEB and Gartner, and they're showing that the market does have a way of targeting people that are serious, that really want the job, and they are welcomed into an organization that is willing to do the D&I, the diversity and inclusion efforts, then that's where you're seeing the retention go up instead of decrease, unfortunately. So I hope that answers your question. And if you have anything else that you'd like to know more specifically about my stuff, I'm happy to talk to you offline.
I want to add, not only from a research perspective, but I did mention that I had a failed entrepreneurship, and I mean, it was interesting because at that moment it was not like scientific research, but we were doing MBAs, a lot of my friends, so like we thought like we know how business works. So we thought, oh yeah, like let's make this with real life. So once we started doing like market studies, so basically our application was basically an app. It was yet another app that connected people that if you want to play basketball, you want to play any sports or any hobby, you connect people, right? So you connect via Facebook, and that's like there was a need for that. So we did the market study. There was a need for that. Like, it was definitely an application that would have been successful. And we did a lot of, like, to the previous point here, like a lot of us, like most of us, we were just IT people, like technology people. So we focused a lot on the prototype and just testing it out. And we, even though we had that MBA part, we actually forgot one very important thing. It was the UX side. So even if you have a market, like people were not willing to yet install another app and do all the steps. Like once somebody had this idea, like let's count how many clicks are you doing to actually get an appointment, get people together. And it was like 15 clicks. So yeah, I mean, we could have the best product, everything, but like going back to your question about research, I think that was a very kind of, it hit me like, yeah, this is not it. So I think that's one of the reasons we failed.
Carl.
Roll call. This will likely be our last question, ladies and gentlemen. However, I'm very comfortable with that because, again, with hopes with time and schedules, these individuals will be here for the questions that you have ongoing. So don't feel like you missed out if you didn't get to ask a question. Hold on to it, track down the person, and make sure you get your value out of being at this conference. Without further ado, Mr. Sutton.
Hi, I'm Carl Settles. I'm the founder of E4Youth, and we work specifically with creative youth. I guess the issue, it's my own pet peeve, so these are I statements. I'm not trying to make any generalizations, but creative people are not being included in the conversation when we start to talk about entrepreneurship, but they are really, the creative economy is what's driving innovation. And so when you start to talk about the lack of people of color in the entrepreneurial space, is that we're systematically cutting people out of opportunity by not really catering to them and indulging them. You know, Steve Jobs was not a programmer, okay? He was a creative thinker. And we have to start having that conversation and talking to our young people of color about the opportunities for them as creative people, just like you were talking about with UX design. You know, you can have engineers build feature sets all you want, but who are they building those feature sets for? And that's what the creative mindset, the problem-solving mindset, engineers and creatives do the same shit. They solve problems, okay? And we, as creative people, need to be in on that conversation about economic development and not this thing that's off here on the side. So I don't have a question.
I was about to ask you that. What is your question?
I have to speak up for my creative people, and because, matter of fact, all of you are creative too.
Well, I will make a comment on that. I don't know if it relates to what he said, which is really, really good. My first two businesses were dance companies, and we used to make jokes about the Caucasian male dancers, like they would say, like, oh, I don't want to dance, I have 2 left feet. So they, before they even step foot in my studio, they've already put themselves a psychological barrier. My younger brother, he loves and hates me, kind of thing. He wants to be like me, but he says, oh, no, you got all the breaks in life, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, not really. I just knew how to work hard, and I'm very stubborn, and I don't like, I never give up, and he's, in his mind, he's a black man in a white man's world, and he can't do it because there's too many barriers, like you can't get funding, you can't get support. And I was like, there's some truths to that, but it's not going to stop you. In this world, this may be the greatest time of our humanity's history. If you believe in Elon Musk, robots are probably going to kill us in 20 years, I mean, this is the time where anyone in front of a computer can become the next billionaire, the whole crypto craze. I don't want to get into that, but there's opportunities for everyone. It's just we got to remove those mental barriers. And I understand we're lacking role models in the minority community. Yes, I mean that sucks. You know, you mentioned TechCrunch with Mark Arlington. They rarely highlight minority startups. There's that good old boy network is there, and you know, we just have to talk to one another and inspire each other. I mean, and just try to remove those barriers in ourselves and in our friends and community. Start small, and eventually, you know, we'll level the playing field, and white men still won't be able to dance. So everyone wins. You know?
Yeah. So just kind of wrap things up. I mean, a couple things. Like, yeah, in a 45-minute panel, we definitely aren't going to include everything. I know that we're talking a lot to folks who are in business that are thinking about leaving and starting their own company and putting some pressure on you there. But there's also a lot of good things in being corporate America, and so we don't mean to poo-poo on that. Certainly, we should definitely at round two we want to bring in more creatives, Carl, into this discussion as well. I think that just to kind of cap things up, I want to take advantage of all the talent we have on this stage right now, and to ask you one question, one answer per person, really quick. What piece of advice would you give the people in attendance today about, you know, what's something they should do today that can help them, you know, those people who are considering stepping out into entrepreneurship? What would you recommend that they do today to get started? And if they've already started and they're like really new to it, what pieces of advice do you give them to be successful down the road? I'll start by just saying one thing that I think has been helpful for me is finding a mentor who is not necessarily 2, 5, 10 years ahead, that's raised a lot of money and is already there, but someone who's like 18 months in advance. That's been transformational for me. Early on in my career, finding someone who's 18 months in advance helped me, you know, get funding early on, and helped me ensure that, you know, I wasn't feeling myself too much, and then also put me in check when I was like going off the rails. So give me real feedback in a mentor relationship type of relationship helped me get to where I'm at 5 years into my entrepreneurship journey. So that's something that I want to leave you guys with. Marcus, you're up.
Failure is far worse than regret. You will all fail. The question is, are you going to get back up and then try again? That's if you have that mentality, the world is yours. You will all fail. Every successful entrepreneur has failed. You know, but then they got back up and they succeeded.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Find some people that are going to give you support, not advice. And the reason why I say this is because when you embark on something new, you might get people who mean well, but don't understand things from your point of view. You have a vision that you're trying to embark on and such. And in my case, it could have been a family member that said, but you could do the safe route. So find people that are going to support you, especially during those moments, because entrepreneurship, as glamorous as we make it, there are going to be some tough moments and times. But the ones succeed are the ones who persevere through those tough moments to end up getting to the greater glory and the prize.
Awesome. Thanks.
I just say go for it. If you have a vision and you really see yourself being there, go for it. Don't wait for life to be kind to you, because it's not. It does not take into consideration what you want to do. Life laughs at you. Look at me. I have a 3-year-old and a husky that does not know he's a dog, and I manage crises every single day. So if I needed my life to be perfect and quiet, I would not be here on the stage right now. So just go for it, make it work, do your best every single day. And if you have done your best, don't measure yourself up to anything else. You are your ruler, and that's my advice. And then definitely what Sterling said, get you a mentor. And my mentors, I think I'm gonna have to start bribing them because I'm like knocking on the door like, hi, it's me again. But get you somebody that's really passionate. Don't know what that is. But just get you someone that's really passionate about what you're doing, and make sure that you always have that connection with them and you appreciate them. You don't have to take every bit of advice, because you don't need advice all the time. You just need support.
Yep.
So the one for me, actually, is kind of two, based on my previous experience, is like understand your risk aversion level at the time of your life you are at. And the reason I say this is because with my failed entrepreneurship, like it's not a failure really. Like I learned a lot, but at the same time, I knew my risk was controlled, and I mean it was I just lost money, right? Like that was the only thing. I didn't lose time. I lost money. If I went out of my job security side, I mean I wasn't ready for leaving my job security, because I would be pounding my head, honestly. Having said that, the other part is building a plan. So I don't also want to be in this continuous loop, like just keeping pushing it. Right now I have it's 5 years, and that's it. Like in 5 years tops. I mean, that's just my stretch, and it might sound like a lot, but at least I have it. Like I'm saying, like in 5 years, I need to be the CEO of my own company, and I need to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, excellent. So thank every one of you for taking the time out of your day for joining us. Thank all of you beautiful people for coming along. Thank you, Brian, for the
Thank you all. We're going to take another 5 minutes. Another 5. Relax. Come get a drink.
Good job, guys. Brian, we don't know each other.
I know we don't.
Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we didn't catch